Since the beginning of human history, people have gathered and built communities along rivers. In the area we now call Seattle, a number of native tribes called the Duwamish River home. And when settlers arrived over 150 years ago, the Duwamish was a natural place for them to establish homesteads and build industries. In the many decades since settlement, the Duwamish suffered the same fate as countless rivers near cities around the world. It became the dumping ground for industrial pollution, runoff, and sewage, while the habitats it once provided were altered or destroyed. Join us as we visit the river to learn more about its history as a hub of Seattle's growth, examine the impact that growth has had on the river's health and those who rely on it, see what's being done to clean it up, and, most importantly, what you can do to help return the river to health. For thousands of years, the region's tribes lived along the river, which gave them both physical and spiritual sustenance. After settlers arrived and began to build what's now Seattle, they filled and dredged the river, turning the river's mudflats and oxbows into a straight channel, or waterway, for ships and industry. Through World War I and World War II, Seattle's population and industries boomed. Raw sewage and waste from airplane manufacturing, shipbuilding, metals recycling, and other industries were poured into the river. This waste was full of pollutants and settled into the mud, or sediment, of the river bottom. When these pollutants get into the river sediment, they are picked up by worms and other creatures, which are then eaten by fish and other wildlife. People can be exposed to these pollutants when they come into contact with polluted mud while clamming, but the biggest risk to people is when they eat polluted resident fish. Pollutants in the fish include polychlorinated biphenyls, or PCBs, arsenic, carcinogenic polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, or CPAHs, dioxins, and furans. PCBs may cause cancer in people who have been exposed to them over a long time. They can also affect learning abilities in children. PCBs are linked to other adverse health effects, such as low birth weight, thyroid disease, and immune system disorders. Long-term exposure to toxic forms of arsenic may cause skin, bladder, and other cancers. Long periods of breathing, eating, or having skin contact with high levels of CPAHs increase a person's risk of cancer. Toxic effects related to dioxins and furans include reproductive problems, problems in fetal development and early childhood, immune system damage, and cancer. People are still polluting the Duwamish, but not nearly as much as we used to. That's because, as a society, we now know that most pollution doesn't just disappear when it gets dumped in the water. It took us a long time to learn this, but once we did, we understood that we needed to do something about it. Today, there are strict laws that limit the amount of pollution that's allowed to go into the Dewamish or any other body of water. And there are laws to ensure that past pollution is cleaned up as well. One of these laws, called Superfund, requires EPA to identify and clean up the nation's most contaminated sites. When deciding if a place should be put on the Superfund list for cleanup, EPA has to find out whether the health of people and the environment are at risk from the pollution. Back in the 1970s, scientists started to find harmful chemicals in Duwamish fish and shellfish. In 2001, EPA added the lower Dewamish to its Superfund list because the number and amount of pollutants in the mud, or sediment, of the river bottom and in the fish and shellfish that people eat pose a significant risk to people's health and the environment. The Superfund Law is based on the principle that the polluter pays. EPA can require responsible parties to clean up the pollution to reduce the risk to people and the environment. In the Dewamish, there are many businesses, landowners, and local governments who will share in the cost of the cleanup. 4 parties, the City of Seattle, King County, the Port of Seattle, and Boeing, stepped up early on to form the Lower Duwamish Waterway Group. They agreed to study the site and take early actions to clean up some of the worst areas of pollution. 5 early action areas were cleaned up while EPA continued to study the Dewamish as a whole. Thanks to these actions, the average level of PCBs throughout the area has been reduced by about half. In 2014, EPA finalized a plan to clean up remaining areas of polluted river sediment. This final cleanup plan, also known as the Record of Decision, or ROD, combines 4 methods to clean up sediments. One method is removal, or dredging, which means scooping out the pollutants with the sediment and sand it's sitting in. In all, close to 1 million cubic yards of polluted sediment will be removed or dredged from the river and taken to landfills. That's over 80,000 dump truck loads. In other areas, the plan calls for capping polluted sediment with clean sand. Containment, or capping, covers the polluted sediment with a thick layer of clean natural materials, mostly silt, sand, and rocks. This is done in places where we are sure the cap will stay in place. In less polluted areas, we can allow natural recovery to occur as clean sediment drifts downstream from the Green River and settles in the Dewamish. And finally, in some areas, we will need to speed up this natural recovery process by adding sand and potentially activated carbon, the kind you would find in a water filter, to give nature a head start. This approach is called enhanced natural recovery. EPA's cleanup plan estimates that about half of the waterway's 412 acres will be cleaned up with dredging, capping, or enhanced natural recovery. The remaining acres will be monitored as natural recovery processes continue the cleanup. Of course, this approach, like the others, requires close monitoring to ensure that it is working. Most importantly, to avoid having to redo cleanup, the work will go forward in stages to ensure that nearby sources of pollution are controlled. We anticipate 3 main stages of cleanup, starting with the most upstream 2 miles, called the Upper Reach. The cleanup is now getting ready for the design phase. Each phase of cleanup will require detailed engineering and monitoring plans. It's important to do the cleanup in a way that doesn't create new problems. We want to make sure the cleanup restores the health of the river for the animals and people who live, work, and play here while keeping the river open for business. During the design phase, we will gather together community members, local agencies, and other interested groups in the Duwamish Roundtable to help us minimize the impacts to the community and to make recommendations to improve the cleanup work. Once the Upper Reach design is done, cleanup will start. Design and cleanups of other sections will proceed down the Dewamish towards Harbor Island. The cleanup plan estimated that dredging, capping, and enhanced natural recovery for the entire site would take about 7 years once final plans are complete. Once active cleanup for all phases is done, we will monitor the areas to make sure that natural recovery continues to improve the river. With all this work, the cleanup plan is estimated to cost $342 million. The Lower Dewamish Waterway is an active waterway with commercial, industrial, residential, and recreational uses on the water and shore. Many people live on the water in their boats. The coming cleanup will take careful planning, as the dredging and capping will take place in the midst of these ongoing uses of the waterway. As Seattle's only river, it's important to clean it up so that it can be a healthier river for generations to come. With so much information, it can seem overwhelming. But here are some things you can do to contribute to a healthier Dewamish. If you eat fish from the Dewamish, only eat salmon. Salmon are in the Dewamish for only a short time of their lives, and they are a safer choice to eat. Don't eat resident fish, crab, or shellfish. They live in the Dewamish their whole lives and contaminants build up in their bodies. They are not safe to eat. If you live or work in Seattle, help keep pollutants out of the water. Don't let lawn chemicals, used motor oil, or car washing water go into street drains. These drains are for rainwater and they lead directly to the Dewamish. Get involved with your river. Help restore habitat, plant trees, and pick up trash at Dewamish Alive events on the 3rd Saturday in October and April every year. Attend Duwamish Roundtable meetings and learn more about the cleanup as it progresses. If you'd like to learn more about the cleanup of the Lower Dewamish Waterway, please follow the EPA Dewamish Facebook page or join our listserv. Thanks, and see you on the Dewamish.